Ele aloha no ke anu e lue, a he wehi ano kauka. He hoa ka ua no ala kai, hulu pei kana hele. E maliu mai, I ka leo kupuna, ma ke ala o ke onga. E hua ka I kilohana, e kulia I ka du.
At the Shangri-La Museum of Islamic Art, Culture, and Design, where art, nature, and ideas converge, we walk with John Leong. Like this place, his work is about transformation and connection, protecting Hawaii's natural resources, building hope in places once left behind, and empowering young people once counted out. Growing up in Nu'uanu Valley, John attended Pono School and worked at the family business.
Our family had a family restaurant, the Wailana, so that was a lot of fun. My grandfather started it, and so I got a chance to see what a business was like, a locally owned business, cared for its customers, and he always took care of his employees, helped them to grow, and they would be there for decades working at the Wailana, and he always took care of them. And I saw how he was using his business to build a community, and that's one of the things that was inspiring to me.
That sense of responsibility to people and place would become his compass, but it was the natural world itself that turned inspiration into a calling.
So when I was in the Youth Conservation Corps under the Department of Land and Natural Resources, it was a pilot program to get young adults interested in conservation in Hawaii. And it gave me a much wider view of what Hawaii's resources and the state of our resources were at, and realizing how fragile our ecosystems were, how few native species we had, and high level of endangered species, high level of invasive species. And it just kind of started to put a calling in my heart that, you know, someone's got to do something about protecting the long-term health of our lands and our community.
And you go away to college.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so I went off to do what most people that want to pursue environmental careers do. I went off to study business at Wharton. So it was such a great opportunity to be so far from home, whole different mentality. Although we were in the city of brotherly love, it didn't feel what Hawaii felt like, where you have the aloha spirit there. And Philadelphia was just fast-paced, everyone for themselves. And it solidified in my heart that I didn't want to be a continuation of the brain drain. I wanted to do something that would take this opportunity that I've been given and bring back something to Hawaii.
That feels incredibly altruistic, especially going to a place like Wharton. The natural path is to go to New York and to go to investment banking, or to go to something where you're making quite a bit of money as a young person.
Yeah.
Did you not feel any tension between that decision, or was Hawaii clearly the way to go?
It was definitely tension. I gotten offers in New York and in San Francisco to work banking and startups in San Francisco, and there was a pull. And I remember walking with an entrepreneurial professor, Miles Bass, on the streets of Philadelphia. And Miles said, if you're called to do something specific in this world and you don't do it, you're not only going to lose out, but others are going to lose out too. And so that really spoke to me. I just felt like, you know, Hawaii, it felt like there's a risk to it, but to me, the reward, the outcome, and the opportunity, if I was to succeed, felt so much greater than that risk.
So John came home and with his wife Juliana in 2000 founded Pono Pacific, Hawaii's first private conservation company. The early days were lean, the mission clear: protect the island's natural resources and prove that business could serve the greater good.
Started out with nothing. I think I had savings, a couple $1,000, and my grandmother gave me a couple $1,000 to help seed us, and we relied on the kindness of our family. My mom shared her computer with us. We worked out of the house. My uncle would let us borrow his truck. He had a 4-wheel drive truck for fishing. but when we needed to access the mountains to do projects, we utilized the truck. So it's just very bootstrapped. We were so grassroots, we were like below the earth, and we were like the nodules and the roots. But it was a lot of fun, and we got to do work that we felt was really important.
Today, Pono Pacific manages more than 40,000 acres of land across 6 islands, from fencing rare habitats to removing millions of pounds of invasive algae, protecting some of the most fragile ecosystems on the planet.
What strikes me as interesting about the work you do is that it's very pro-environment, but it's also pro-business, right? That you are in the environmental sector, also out to make money. Tell me a little bit about that, because when we traditionally think about environmental organizations, often they are at odds with business.
Economy, profit, all of those areas, they can sound like bad words to some, but really, if we do it the right way, we can use them to fuel good movements. That there's been adversity between, yes, the environmental side and the corporation side. And really, an opportunity in leadership, I think, is that how do we find that bridge where we can see the good that each side is trying to do? Because ultimately, there's good people on both sides, and they have desires to make something better in our state.
Protecting the land wasn't enough. John also wanted to invest in people who would care for it. So he, his wife, and partner Matt Bauer spun off Kupu, a nonprofit workforce development program to educate and train at-risk youth, with roots in the same conservation work John did as a teenager.
But this is really about developing workforce, developing the next generation, building capacity, and it was a better model as a nonprofit. So in 2007, we launched Kupu. We got the name after working on Hawaiʻi Island, where you're from, and seeing the lava fields, and Kupu ferns are one of the first plants to come back after a devastating lava flow. And it starts to bring life back to the land after tragedy or challenge. And so I think that's the heart of what Kupu is looking to do, is how do we bring life about in our community. About 70 to 80% of our young people are coming from middle to low income families, and then probably 40% are coming from severe poverty. I got the privilege of going to Pono, going to go to Wharton, and seeing what that type of education can do for me. And in many ways, I wanted to create access to educational outcomes and opportunities that some people wouldn't have otherwise.
And how many young people have gone through Kupu now?
Gosh, Yunji, we have probably over 6,500 young people that have finished the program. And so they've gone through different things from summer to year-round programs. We're throughout all of Hawaii, but also in Guam, Saipan, and American Samoa. So it's just been a really cool movement to see come about, and it's like this whole network. And so it's, today you can go to certain government or nonprofits and see that a big percentage of their workforce is Kupu alums.
From bootstrapping in the field to building a nonprofit that spans the Pacific, John has always seen potential in what others overlook. Coming up, we step inside the space where that vision comes to life. At the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Ho'okupu Center, a once neglected space has been transformed into a hub for learning, where students work toward diplomas and train in the kitchen.
We had a vision for this space, that it could become a place that would help to uplift the most vulnerable in our community.
It took years of negotiations with the state to lease this land and more than $6 million in fundraising to make it a reality.
After we got the space and we kind of cleaned it up, the crime rates dropped by about 90% in terms of police calls.
Tell me about some of the stories you hear from graduates and people who have come through this place.
So there was a young man, he had been homeless, he had been on drugs, alcohol, and really going through a difficult situation in his life. And he had gone a lot of the ways through the program, but he also had anger issues, and so he was having difficulties with our team. He ended up leaving the program. Well, after we finished the renovations of the facility, a man and his fiancée come into the facility, and they're looking around, and he introduces himself, says, "Hey, I'm so-and-so." He said, "Yeah, this place really helped me get in the right direction. Even though I left the program, it just started pushing me in the right direction. And today, you know, I've graduated from high school. I'm now a manager at a tech company. I bought a home in Utah, and I'm about to get married, and I need to show my fiance the place that saved my life, because if it wasn't for this place, I would be dead right now." And that was for me such a uplifting and encouraging story as to why we were doing what we're doing. And if we had given up, if we had just said, you know, this is too difficult, stories like this may not take place.
This center is full of stories like that. In the kitchen, the team started work at 5:30 this morning ahead of an executive event tonight.
We appreciate philanthropy and grants. We also know that it's really important for our young people and for the program's continuity to be able to have its own revenue source as well too. So that's where we try to add a little bit of business innovation into what we do, and give our young people the opportunities to also be proud of the work that they can do, and they're earning an income and not just getting a handout in life.
So young folks come in here, they get to sort of intern and shadow, and then maybe become a staff member,
Yeah.
and then maybe go on to work in a restaurant.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a great way to, we're really trying to support the workforce development in Hawaii, and especially in the culinary area. Some people may not want to go into culinary after it, but they're going to take transferable skills.
It must make you so proud to be in here.
Oh, very proud, yeah. Especially when you have great guys like Max. I mean, not only talented, but good hearts. I mean, that's what the kind of folks that we're so excited to see succeed in life, and you know they're going to be leaders one day that do great things. So
If Mac doesn't show up, I cry.
Max Lepule went from student to staff and has the culinary chops to prove it.
Hello Pig sliders. We have I believe a hot wing kind of slider, so it's like Portuguese. It's a kimchi Portuguese sausage. And then we also have a Korean barbecue pork. It's a thin sliced pork belly marinated in like a spicy, sweet kind of marinade. And then that'll go in our sliders.
so most kids his age know how to make chicken nuggets and French fries, but you can see that. I mean, they're making some pretty advanced stuff.
Advanced with tremendous impact during the COVID-19 pandemic, this kitchen put out more than 100,000 meals.
What was great, one of the comments that I got from one of our youth was that he was so used to being on the receiving side of benefits, but now he was able to now provide the benefit to the community. And I think that was very empowering for him.
They always say it is better to give than to receive, right? And to have that kind of agency and to get to contribute
Exactly.
to your community, because you know that so many people want to, they just don't have the means or the mechanisms to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that was just one of those unplanned benefits, but then you realize that the more you serve and you give back, you realize you have that agency to make a difference.
Once a place of neglect, the center now reflects a deeper change of the space and those in it.
I mean, you think about what was here prior to 2011 when we started. It was a place of darkness, of, you know, it was draining life. People were just coming here to get lost. And we're able to now transform this place into a place of light, a place of life that's breeding hope and opportunity. I mean, that's the transformative power of what we can do in place, but also through people. And when we come together, and that's my hope for our state, is that we can do more of these type of projects, that where we can see what seemed like it was impossible, what seemed like it was hopeless, and transform, and not only the physical, but to see life come out of it and the people that come through those places.
And what's the hope for next door?
So our hope for next door is that we just got approved by the state for a lease approval for 60 years. It's an acre. And it is an amazing space that's very underutilized right now. But we're going to be transforming the building there into creating more classrooms, makerspace, meeting areas, and a little superette that we're going to have there that the kids can sell hot items, food items, as well as out of the makerspace. Our goal is to be able to give our young people the ability to work with their hands and then be able to sell some of their product that they're creating at that superette. We're going to have more park space and 80 more stalls there for parking. So it'll add more value to the overall park and the community as well.
Yeah, I can just see it. Surfers coming out of the water, they're going to grab a hot meal, they have a beautiful place to sit in. I mean, what a transformation for this neighborhood, too.
And just think about, if we could do this on this little island, what could we do on our bigger island? What could we do on the bigger global island together if we're really intentional and create places that have just that heart programmed into them?
Still ahead, for John, transforming places is only part of the journey. Equally important is transforming himself, learning when to lead, when to step back, and how to find balance. That's coming up. Leading an organization for 25 years means growing alongside it. For John Leong, that's meant rethinking what leadership looks like and what it requires of him.
You've had the consistency of leading this organization throughout its existence, but I'm curious to know how your leadership style has changed over that time.
I've learned the difference between kindness and niceness, and I think you can be kind, but not necessarily be permissive. What I grew up with, thinking that keeping the peace with everyone was part of that aloha spirit or that kindness that you grew up in here. But really, I think that I realized that the kindness is doing the right thing and getting to it quicker. And so I think I've become a lot quicker decision maker as I've gone on.
As an entrepreneur, a husband, and father of 4, John has had to learn balance, shifting his time and attention as life demands.
I heard it shared once that there's the fulcrum, the power of the fulcrum, and sometimes being adept in knowing where you're best needed. Sometimes you think that, if I spend 4 hours here, 4 hours here, 4 hours here, it'll be perfect, and just no one move, right? But I think that the fulcrum says is that there's a leverage point. If there's more weight in one area of what you're doing, if you slide the fulcrum closer to it, then the thing keeps in balance. And that fulcrum is really your time and your attention. And so I think being adept into knowing where you're needed at different times. And so that's meant that sometimes, starting the business or growing certain initiatives, my time needs to be there. But there's times where my kids are going through something or my wife needs me. So it's an awareness, I guess, but then also a flexibility to know that we have to be able to make those shifts in order to be effective in the different dimensions of life.
I've heard you speak before, and I would love for you to expand on this. And maybe it goes back to this idea that you shared about the fulcrum, but about understanding what season of life you're in and understanding what season of life you're in as a leader.
I think as a leader, you're going to go through different phases. I took a sabbatical actually about a year or so ago, which is really good for me because I had gone through a time where I lost my dad a few years back, and when he passed away, my mom, soon after that, got dementia. So I came to a place where I felt that now I'm the older son carrying in our family, caring for my kids, a wife, and then no one to really look up to in my immediate family. And so it was kind of a time where I just did a lot of soul searching as well, but taking that pause, I think, is so important for any leader or any person really, to just really think through where we're at in life. And I realized at that point that some of the things that were my motivations that got me to where I am may have been successful in helping me get me there, but they weren't going to be successful in the next season. You think about a car, and you get off, you start from zero and then you start moving, and you're in first gear, and that gear has a lot of torque. It's moving, and you push on the gas and gets it going, but if you don't change gears, you're going to start to burn out. And so really you can get to a much higher gear and using less gas, but traveling at a faster pace. And I feel that's kind of, as a leader, what we have to learn how to do. It's like, okay, we had a gear that got us going in our career, but we have to shift up in gears, and identifying what gear we're in and what that calling of that gear is to be able to then move in that design.
What gear would you say you're in now?
Maybe third. I think that, I think for me, third gear is a gear where I am definitely not as hands-on, really more around our building strategy and partnerships in what we're doing. I would love to be able to also look at how do we bring in more resources to our state that can now help to seed and plant and nourish the work that's being done by other leaders.
I'm curious to know what you think Hawaii needs from its leaders right now.
I really believe that Hawaii has a calling to be a lighthouse to the nations, that the work that we do here, how we do it, and the heart in which we do it really needs to just transcend our shores. And now more than ever, I believe the way we do things in Hawaii, the community that we're building is needed in our world. And that heart in which we have unity, that we have compassion, kindness, those are the things that our world needs to see more of. And so the more we succeed as a state, I think it gives a broader hope to the broader world as well too. And so yeah, this is a really critical time in Hawaii's history, and our leaders, our community, it's time for us to go all in.
Is there a quote or maxim that you lean on when things are difficult?
My wife had a quote on our refrigerator at one point. It was from a book called Dream Releasers, and it said to die empty. We don't want to be selfish and just take our dreams with us to the grave, but rather part of us is to have that generosity to live in a way that's going to enlighten and help others, and to die empty, not holding on to something we wished we did, but to do it while we're here on this earth. And so for me, that's one of the things that I also hold on to, is that I want the time that I have, I don't know how long I'll have here, but to use it wisely, to make the world better, to set the next generation up.
We always end the same, so I want to ask you, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Another Teddy Roosevelt quote that comes about is that comparison is the thief of joy. And I just feel like, you know, I'm thinking about this with my own kids, and, you know, as they're teenagers and others right now too, that we're all gonna walk our own path, and knowing what that authentic path is for yourself is so important, because if you don't, and you're comparing yourself or wanting to go the way someone else went, then we might be cutting ourselves short from what we could be doing. So
in our moment right now, we live in such a highly comparative culture.
oh yeah, social media, everything, right?
So that really does ring true for me, that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's, I guess with that, sometimes the important thing is to just quiet life down too. Is, you know, it doesn't have to be a 6-month sabbatical, but it could be an afternoon. And every day I'll have a little bit of a quiet time to read, to meditate, walk. But I think it's really important, because that helps to provide some buffer to all the other stuff you're going to get throughout the day, whether it be in, you know, social media or emails or whatever, you know, just conversations you have, to just re-anchor yourself. Because if we don't make those intentional times, we just go from one thing to the other. It's easy to just go on autopilot, and it's also easy to just start looking at what everyone else says and start to find our strength in that, where it should be our strength isn't found in that, it's found in quiet and peace.
John's journey shows that leadership isn't about comparison, but conviction, daring to act and trusting that small steps can spark big change. For A Leader's Journey, I'm Yanji Denise.
Mm-hmm.